Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I asked to have a lavalier mic so I can move around a little bit. I tend to move a little bit on stage, but thanks. It's been a while since I was here, and I'm here to talk a little bit of more than the work itself, a little bit of reflecting on the work that we've done over the past years, and reflecting on the idea of building on craft. No, missing the idea of how things are made, missing the idea of how we're interacting in society. So not so much about the final project, but how we're doing those projects. So when I talk about build on craft, and I come from Mexico City. I think this computer wants me to stand here. I'll try to stand here. But anyway, so I come from Mexico City, where we're ingenious by necessity. So we're a country that if you go out on the street, everything is very ingenious, and we didn't know, or at least I didn't see that very clearly when I started being there in Mexico. And more with time, you start seeing that because we have a collapsed system and nothing works as it should, this informalness that thrives in Mexico City and makes it super vibrant becomes the flavor of Mexico. But we're very clever, and because of, again, for necessity, you know? So this is I'm going to go over this one. This is Mexico, but bear with me. I swear this is not staged, guys. This was taken by Gerardo Salinas, my ex-partner that I had in my firm. But this guy here, he owns this store here. So because the light didn't work, and everybody was like either or crashing or passing the red light, nobody would stop in his store. So he was concerned, and he started calling the government or the police guy saying, can somebody please from the government come and change the light? Nobody paid attention, so it was easier for him to call his compadre, this guy who owns the truck. He put the truck here, the compadre is making sure that the stair doesn't fall. This guy, of course, doesn't know anything about electricity, but he's willing to take his hands and his life to fix the bulb. And then, by coincidence, then a police guy shows up. Like, everything is under control, the police are here. So this is a little bit how Mexico works. Not only Mexico, I think most of our third world countries and places where we need to thrive in a system that's not as formal or as organized as other places. Oh, so that wasn't rare on the case when I started doing architecture. So that's why I started kind of going back and saying, what happened during the way I started doing architecture? So when we were doing this house, the house for a ballerina dancer back in the days, I remember that I didn't want to have a house with any panels or typical things that I would find in the construction industry. And I said, I want to find something that makes it a bit more meaningful, about craft, about people putting their love into the pieces of the work that we were doing. So I remember going to these places in Mexico City, in Colonia Doctores, that they would fix wrecked cars. So I said, well, what if I bring one of these guys that works with wrecked cars, and I bring him to the site, and he works on the house, and he helps me do the house. So I don't care if he's not in the construction industry. I just care that they can actually polish the metal, and they can get the job done. And we got the house done. It was done 2001, I think. And that's when I started seeing and understanding that craft has been very important in the things that we're doing. It hasn't changed over time. I was maybe not so aware of it. So when we were doing the Nestle Chocolate Museum, again, this is a museum that, for instance, what was interesting in this project is that we were not asked to do a chocolate museum. We were asked to do, we were working with an agency that, I think there's a little bit of echo. Is that bothering? That good? Should I lower the mic? There, a bit better. So we were working with an agency to actually come into the factory of Nestle and make kind of an experience. And then when we were there, we analyzed and we said, well, we should come back with something better because we want to do architecture. So we came back and we said, let's propose a chocolate museum. There wasn't a museum, and we said, how can we have a company, a transnational company, do something that gives back to the community? They want to brand their company. It's okay, I don't mind. The kids will come to the factory, they'll understand how the chocolate is done, but I really want something that the community can take away. So we did a chocolate museum, which was interesting because by that time, the government hadn't even tapped into doing a chocolate museum, which was really weird for Mexico understanding that the chocolate was used for trade with the Aztecs back in the days. So when we talked about that parallel innovation, can I question the project? Can I question the brief? Can I really come back to my client and say, maybe this is the wrong brief. Maybe the question that you're asking is the wrong question. So we proposed it. The vice president back in those days, he loved the idea. He went to Switzerland. He sold the idea to the people in Switzerland. He came back and he said, we're going to do the museum. So this is a project that has been very successful because now you have all the kids going to visiting to having this chocolate experience. And I found that this was really meaningful for me because we went from architects to trusted advisors. I found that I more often than not, I prefer to be being the trusted advisor to my client rather than the architect. Because if you're just a designer, it's very easy for him to say, oh, I found this new designer, or somebody that's cheaper than you are, or somebody that's whatever, all the excuses that we've all heard in our profession. And when I'm an advisor to my client, he wants me there all the time. He wants me making the decisions with him. That some of the times, or most of the times, I'm doing the business strategy with him that ends up being results in architecture. And also answering the brief and reprogramming it. I always quote my friend Alejandro Aravena, who says, there's nothing worse than answering correctly the wrong question. So it's like we don't even tend to question what they're giving us as a brief. We just say, okay, the brief says this, okay, let's answer the brief. It's like, is that really how we should answer it? Or should we sit back, maybe invite sociologists, anthropologists, landscape designers, policymakers, and question what the real question should be? And by that is how I started really understanding that we have the power to reprogram. It's our responsibility to sit back and say, what is my best opportunity for this project? So even coming back to projects like Tori Tori, and it was interesting to come back and find all these images of the construction site because I really love the idea of the progress, or the process of the project. So even in projects that we didn't have enough money because we were limited by the budget, we were the CNC cutting thin gauge metal, but we had these amazing workers in Mexico welding every piece, so it was 10 centimeters or 4 inches. We had a recovered styrofoam sprayed on the inside that would blow up once it was sprayed to make it not sound hollow. And we would come up with this amazing facade where, I mean, it was almost like I wish you could have been there to smell the welding and see these guys. It was like a performance. And most of the times, as architects, we have the design of the project, and then we just show the final images, like how the project is finished. And I really love the process because, to me, it makes total sense of what I'm talking about. Recovering, first, understanding the ability of these guys to do the jobs that they're doing, to try to do contemporary architecture in a country where it has its limitations, and we're trying to figure out how to do amazing stuff. But then you get these results, and you say, wow, this is 10 times better than having maybe a company come up with everything numbered already and ensembled on site, where you didn't get to see it built as if it was a sculpture, a living sculpture. So this is the result of the project as it was finished. I mean, talking about collaborations, we always do these collaborations with all of our friends. This was Héctor Esraue, industrial designer, Nacho Cadena, and many other people. And we need to understand where design is failing, where governments are failing. And at least, I don't talk only about Mexico as a collapsed system. I think that the governments are failing in many different countries and in many different ways. So can projects tap into those things that are broken, and can we start involving ourselves with other people to really make these things become a little bit better? This is an example of a project that is, this is Interlomas. And I always joke a little bit saying, like, this is a little bit like Inception. So it's a suburb inside a suburb, inside a suburb, inside a suburb. And the deeper you go, the less public space you have, the less people are walking around there, the less life you see on the streets. Everything is gated. All the green areas are private communities. And so they did a shopping center. And in the shopping center, they invited us to do a department store. That maybe for every architect, doing a department store is not that glamorous. We all want to do museums and cultural projects. But in the office, we always enjoy understanding what we can do with the projects that we have. Can we push the clients a little bit? Can we really reframe the questions again? So they asked us to do a facade for a building, and we said, yes, we'll do the facade for sure, but what more can we do? Is there a possibility to provide something additional to what they're asking? And yes, I mean, we did. It's the first project that we ever did, that we did a 3D model. We sent the 3D model to Kansas, to Sainer Metals. They sent everything back already fabricated. So it was interesting because by the end of the project for the client, we said, oh, the project is all being built. We didn't do any 2D drawings. And the client was like, no, your contract says you have to submit 2D drawings. I'm like, but it's already built. What do you care? No? We went from a 3D model to building it. It's like, no, but the contract says you have to submit your 2D drawings. So we, of course, submitted our 2D drawings. But it was interesting to try to do something that all the panels were totally, they were different. Everything was custom made, and the possibilities of doing that. But even though I really enjoy the design of the projects, I'm more interested of how we can tie, or how we can rebuild or tie all these broken tissues of our society. So even if a department store can provide a public space on the rooftop, I think it's a very meaningful project. So the project also starts giving something back. And interesting about this project is 30% of the income now comes from the upper part of the store. And then the department store now opens up until 2 a.m. because we managed to take all the equipment out, put a park, or a little bit of landscape up here. There's a bookshop, and there's many things. So all the neighbors that they don't have a place to go because there are no public spaces now can stay up there during the weekends. And it becomes something, it's not maybe a lot, but if all the projects kind of gave back a little bit to communities, we would have better cities. If everybody took into consideration what they can add. No? So can design add value? For sure. I think we have to take on that challenge. What are we doing, and what does it give back to the community? This is another project that I hadn't talked too much about in the past years. But in talking about innovation, I mean, what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on the design as the innovative part, or are we really building these social broken tissues that we have? This sits in Santa Fe. It used to be they used to have the movie theaters here, so we had to use the existing structure. So this is a grocery store. And the interesting thing about this grocery store is that we also try to figure out what we can do with them. If they're a formal platform, they're a formal company, can they tie or tap into the informalness of the producers that are around there, or the informal markets that pop up in the streets of Mexico? So yes, I can talk about the design and the JFRC panels and many of the things that happened in the project, but I'm more concerned, or I'm more interested in figuring out or talking about what we try to do on the rooftop. So the whole rooftop was about providing areas for harvesting and about tying relationships to the people that lived in Toluca. So making sure that the client would understand that maybe if he had a producer, these guys that were producing in their farms, a little bit like maybe 5 or 10 minutes or 20 minutes away, they could come here and show all the people that were buying apartments here the thing that they were producing. And then maybe one of the informal markets popping up would also appear. And if they found out that there was an interesting produce to put there, they could either have it harvesting on the rooftop or putting it inside the store. The interesting thing that happened, I mean, it was a huge success when they opened up the building. The clients were super happy. One of the main ideas was to take the cars out one of the days also to have this informal market appear. And what happened was that the client, I was talking about these platforms for social reconstruction, which I think need to happen. Again, what are we designing, and who are we designing for? So even if it's paid by a client, can this serve as a platform for all the communities that are a little bit up for closer to Toluca? And it lasted for a while. And then, as I explained, it was very successful. So nobody was parking here. They were parking up here because they really liked the experience of the grocery store. And the client called us up and he said, oh, this is amazing. We're being very successful. We want you to do an extension to the building. I said, oh, that's perfect. He's going to ask for more harvesting areas. Or he said, no. We want to take the harvesting areas out and we want to put more car park. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is a shopping center. They can park anywhere. No, but they want to park in our place. So I refused to do it, and if you go to the project now, it's cut here. They cut half of the canopies, and they took all these the harvesting areas out. And I mean, yes, of course, I got angry at the beginning, and then I have a couple of colleagues and friends that, because we had this project, now they're doing a similar project in some other place. So I think that I'm not going to get tired at all of pushing clients in a direction where I think we need to share this responsibility. So it's interesting because when we talk about smart cities that aim to connect, I always question, like, what are we connecting? What are the real connections? No, we tend to connect technologically, and we need to, when we talk about the future, I always joke with my friends that are obsessed about artificial intelligence, and I say, we keep on talking about artificial intelligence, but we don't even have emotional intelligence. So we should really kind of sit back and understand how we're relating to each other before we talk about the future and all the different things that everybody's imagining. So if you haven't, I love this image of David Byrne. I don't know if you've seen his concert. If you haven't, if he's on tour, please go and check it out, because he comes out and he talks, he grabs his brain, this toy brain in his hands. He talks about the connection, what we're missing as a community, as a society, and what's happening with the world today. So Cineteca Nacional is also a great example of that. When we were asked to do the National Film Institute, and talking about this is really important, no? I mean, everything is technologically driven, but I mean, what is it making? Is it making us more human, less human? Are we losing our capacity to realize the importance of a craft that's been about to disappear? And not only the craft, but the love of using your hands and putting your hands into the work that I sometimes miss when I'm seeing all this amazing architecture happen, which, again, don't get me wrong. I mean, I know the time frames, and I know the clients want things built in a certain amount of time. I mean, this was a 600,000 square foot extension of Cineteca that we did in 9 months. So I understand fast times, but I also understand the power of craft and the power of making sure that there's love in the projects. As I say, there's care. You know? There's people that put their hands to it. So when we were doing the National Film Institute, this was the 4 existing buildings. You would enter through this little door here. Everything used to be a parking lot. And yes, we added more green areas because nobody knew the exact dimension of the site, which sits in a place in Coyoacán, which is great, and now you're getting all these high-density buildings. So having the Cineteca be there and creating a park was very important for me because it connects to the downtown Joco, the little town, and then a cemetery that's around there. So how could we connect as a green area more than enclosed buildings? At the beginning, I had proposed to take all the car parks out because 70% of the people that would come to Cineteca would come in public transportation. Then I understood that for them, also the parking lot was a business because most of the people that were around there in office space would use the Cineteca as a parking lot. So it was sort of income for the Cineteca. So we proposed to take the car parks and do a parking structure at the main entrance. And with that, also have an extension for 4 new cinemas, create vaults that they were required for the archive. And this is the project as it sits today. But not only talking about doing the Film Institute, how can that become a platform? How can that become a platform for many other things to happen? And how could that really start engaging with the community? So yes, we did interiors, and we were very proud of doing very successful acoustically proven isoptics and everything. But we were more interested about this. This was how it looked before, and this is how it looks now when we take the cars out. So now you enter sort of a campus-like feeling, and this is what I really wanted to start seeing, that people would go there and just sit around. And I mean, if they were going to go see the movies, it was perfect. If they didn't, it was okay. So providing spaces for other things to happen was very, very important for us. For instance, in the original brief, there was no outdoor cinema. We said, well, in Mexico, you have this amazing weather. Why not have an outdoor cinema? And even talking to the government or the people from the municipalities, I mean, they were like, yeah, they didn't want the idea at the beginning, or they were starting to get convinced, but then they said, nobody's going to sit there. We said, leave the space. They will sit. They will occupy. Don't worry. And then they suggested that we would give people petates, that are these kind of woven mats to sit around. And does this have a positive impact in the community? Of course, because we're being generous with a project that can do much more than what is asked for. So the project now became a place where people go there not only to, of course, to watch the movies, but there are people that get together for still complaining about the 43 disappeared students that the government hasn't even given us answers of today. When we had 2 years ago this horrible earthquake again in Mexico, people were gathering here to bring food and bring clothing for people that would need it. So it becomes a place for everybody, a place where everybody can go there and everybody feels it's their place. You have all these people getting together. You see a guy with a guitar here, or somebody's doing their work. So this is one of the best things that can happen, because I think by providing all these additional spaces, we gained things so we can even push them to provide theater space, provide music. Now they're having they also did a museum, and well, this is a. If you ever go there, or if you haven't visited, when you want to sit down in the outdoor cinema, they will ask you if you want one petate or two petates, no? So I was curious to say, why would somebody ask for two petates? So if you're there with your girlfriend and you ask for two petates, you're not going to watch the movie, no? And but there's guys that, I mean, they do it very clever. These guys don't care, no? Or these guys that did a taco, no? So you have the. I don't know if this guy's carrying somebody in there, but I don't know. But if you go there and somebody asks for two, you're not going to watch anything at all. Be careful. And the day of the opening of the national, when the president left term, they were saying, oh, nobody's going to show up for the outdoor cinema. It was designed, well, it's designed for 600 people, and there was 3,000 people the day of the opening. This is a gate that connects the cemetery of the old town of Joco to the Cineteca, and there's a gate that has exhibitions for photography and so on. There was people standing on the gates watching the movie. Other projects that we worked on, again, we repeated a second project with the department store, because they had a really amazing site in Insurgentes, and we wanted to. I asked the clients for that project. I said, we just finished this one in Interlomas. Can we do this other one? And the interesting thing about this one was I really was concerned why at some point all the companies kind of locked out. They all did warehouses. They didn't care about the community. They didn't care about where they were. And I said, can we break that again? Can we open up and connect the inside out? Is there a way that we can actually start doing with a facade system that really relates to something that's more meaningful and interesting again, that I start sharing these experiences that are happening on the inside. So we passed from a 2D image or a 2D graphic to a 3D environment, that we had a 3-meter deep facade, that we could start having all these forms of exploration, of possibilities, no? And what I mean by possibilities is not only having mannequins of Mother's Day sale or something like that, but really having experiences of a gastronomical experience. So again, you have this 3-meter deep facade. So how do you connect the inside out? What's the relationship to the street? How do we connect? How do we provide all these additional spaces? So when we did the project, I remember that, of course, the bidding started with the contractors. And again, coming back to craft, I always say that this will always remain. I mean, even though everybody talks about speed and the new factories and new technologies, I don't imagine any building without any fingerprints or handheld things on it. No, I mean, the day everything comes with robots and drones, I think I'm going to change profession for sure. But I still love this, and still I'm impressed by it. So the moment that the general contractors started winning the bids, I always like going to the shop. So the guy who won one of the bids for the facade of this project, I go to his factory and I'm like, so where's your CNC machine? I mean, you must have all these super good technology. And he points to this guy and he says, this is my CNC guy. So this guy literally must have cut like maybe 60 hexagons, and I swear that they were like precise as if it would have been a CNC machine. And so when you start seeing the way they're doing these things and welding them together and then sandblasting them and then and putting them all, so they were all compared to each other to see if they were the right size, and then they were doing these 3-meter hexagons. I mean, again, I love the final project, but I wish people would have seen this more times than the final result. So, I mean, this sits in Insurgentes and Felix Cueva, so it's a super dense area and super crowded corner. So even by the construction that we were doing, a lot of people were stopping by and asking what was going on. They were looking at all these staircases and people going up and down and seeing how everything was being ensembled. Craft slows things down and values traditional techniques while maintaining the importance of human connection. So more than the craft itself, I think we're losing this ability to connect to somebody and value, making sure that he's valued for what they're doing. I always spend a lot of time on the construction sites and making sure that, because I've had the experience of coming with all your drawings and you have the general contractor, no? So the owner of the company normally gets the drawings and just throws it back to the guys that are working on the site, no? So after I saw that happen a couple of times, I said, I'm not gonna talk to the owner of the company. I wanna talk to the guys that are there, the guys that are really, really putting their hands and their love into the things that they're building, because nobody explains to them what's going on. So I normally would go and explain to them what they were building and trying to make them understand why it was important for me as an architect to have them there and to work with us on the project. So this is a project, again, that the whole idea was to have a radio station here and maybe have a gastronomical experience or have maybe a CrossFit session with a company. And Liverpool as a department store didn't know how to handle all these relationships with different people of course, now you see it in many places around the world, all these alliances with different brands to promote the stuff that they're doing. So at the end, they didn't do anything. They didn't activate the facade. I brought them an agency that worked with many different brands, and they told them, rent it to me for a year, and I'll show you how to do these relationships with different clients and how to activate certain things in the facade. And they said, no, that's not our business. We just care about selling what we do, and people come to the store and we sell, so that's okay. And yeah, at least up till today, there are no signs and mannequins saying no Father's Day sale or whatever. And there's still people that prefer to sit outside in the restaurant and connect to the street. And again, this is a project that, even though it's not activated as it was planned, I wanted it to become a platform for many other things that could actually end up connecting. I remember my good friend Paul Nakasawa, he said, we should take it as a case study to Harvard, as a business case study of how much it would have made economically, the facade, no? So even if they would have understood the possibilities economically, maybe they would have gotten it. But so it's there in Mexico. It's still interesting to take a look at, but I hope a next generation of architects also push their clients to make these things possible. So talking about experiential innovation, and another thing that is interesting to us is that it doesn't matter the cost of the project, the budget, it doesn't matter the scale of the project. This was a refurbishment of an existing building in Colonia Roma in Mexico. And we were called to do the Mercado Roma. And people kind of laughed at us at some point because they said, why do you want to do a contemporary market in Mexico? You already have all these old, amazing ones. Why would you have a new one? And we kind of analyzed that and we said, well, why don't we, instead of complying to what the client wants and dividing or subdividing this space and then renting out the spaces, why don't we go and look for the community that might want to be here, no? So we went and looked for our friends that are chefs, and our friends and our chef friends introduced us to their the people that they work with, and then we went like from the back to the front, no? Instead of designing something and then seeing who was going to be there, we found the people that would want to be here and brought them to the market. So this was a project that we started, again, from the people that wanted to exhibit their produce and wanted to be in a contemporary market, and we grabbed most of the important people or the most passionate people that we knew. Again, a project about collaboration. So Cecilia León de la Barra did the flooring for us. There were Nacho Cadena did the graphic design. So many people were involved. And again, it was a matter of just selecting how they wanted to express themselves inside the Roma market. There's a speakeasy or piano bar that also happens on the inside if you get a chance to go to Mexico and be around there. So it became very successful after we finished it, and it's interesting because now I sometimes get clients that show it as references to me, like, oh, can you do something like the Roma market? I'm like, yes, we can. I mean, we did that one. I want to talk about this one that I remember. I don't know if you've read about Mimi Seeger. She's a very important critic, and I remember we had a conversation about insecurity issues and what Mexico was going through. And this is Monterrey, and the people in Monterrey, and this is a place where they would laugh about Mexico City, saying, oh, you guys have all the insecurity in Mexico City and Monterrey, we're fine, we're totally, and then it switched, and then Monterrey was like super insecure, all the drug wars and many things that were getting out of hand. But when we were doing this project, and I remember the conversation with Mimi saying, are you architects, do you think you guys are responsible for insecurity issues, or you're not? I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I mean, if you do a residential building and you have this plinth where you have a security guard there, maybe the government's not going to even put security near there because you already are providing a private security that's going to be there. So you're not making your government do their job by providing security to be around the place. So that really kind of stuck and rang a bell to me. And I said, you know what? You are right. Because we're making them not be attentive of what they need to do as a system to provide things for the community to be safe. So when we did this building, instead of having a plinth, I convinced them to have the underground parking and to open up to the street, which this was kind of the typical buildings that you would get around there. Everything had these plinths with a huge parking lot, with huge security, gated communities, and we were totally against that. We said, let's open up and let's make sure that if we start having more of these projects that open up to the city, we really then ask the government to do what they're supposed to do and not run away to other communities. No? So this is a project that opens up. It's a residential project. It's 34 units. You have retail at the base. You have office space, and then you have these 34 units that also start, by the zoning, we had to set back the building, but we also wanted a building where you could find or see your neighbors. It's also an interesting thing to kind of reflect on, that we criticize our societies that nobody talks to each other anymore, but we're kind of the first ones not to even say hi, no? I remember all these fancy new buildings that you actually get to see people waiting in their car. They'd rather wait in their car before getting out and have the elevator with somebody else, no? So it's like, really? We're becoming that society where before you would tell your neighbor if you were going to go away for the holiday so he could take a look at your house or whatever, he could call you. Now that's you would never tell your neighbor you're going on a vacation because you might think that he's going to be the one jumping into your apartment, no? So I think it's an interesting moment even to reflect as a society how we're behaving, no? Because as architects, we're always kind of chasing society to understand what are the buildings that we need to do for this contemporary society and the way the societies are changing. So this is totally an extroverted building. Of course, you can have all the privacy you want, but you still enter either through the plaza and you see your neighbors when you're there. And it's more about connecting to people and connecting even to the background. And it's a building made of local stone. And again, I could talk about the craftsmanship on the building as well. But I'm going to close with this one, which is a Photo Boca, which is, I think, one of the most satisfying experiences that I've had as an architect, because it ties my passion for music. I used to be a drummer in a band for more than 8 years. I mean, we were signed with Virgin Records, so I left music for architecture. So when we got this project, and first I have to confess that I was a little bit skeptical, because Cineteca is a project that it's very successful, but they didn't finish it the way we had designed it. There was the contract was, they didn't end up paying us the whole contract. It was a mess, things that happen in countries like ours. So when I got a call by this other important person in the government now in Boca del Rio in Veracruz, I said, I don't want to work for the government again. I don't want to go through the same experience. And when he started telling me about this project that he wanted to do to build a Philharmonica, I was really, really interested in paying attention. No? So this idea about digital images, I mean, we're all looking for real. No? We all want real relationships. We all want real jobs. We want to feel like real, alive. no? Not like spectators just passing or swiping an iPad or swiping an experience that's not even ours. So when this project came to me, the mayor of Boca del Rio told me, you know what? I went to Boca del Rio and I asked the people what they were proud of, and I didn't find an answer. And that was very sad because they weren't proud of anything. They were proud of being, they said, oh, Veracruz. And no, yeah, Veracruz has its port, but in Boca del Rio, what are you guys proud of? So he found a couple of musicians there, and then he thought that it would be interesting to create a philharmonic out of nothing, out of a couple of musicians that were there. So he invited Mester as a music director, very famous director, to start gathering musicians and start building a philharmonica that also started creating a very interesting program for underprivileged kids, that they could come in and they started also learning to play classical instruments. And they grew in 2 years. They were already very successful, touring in many places in Mexico. So by the time he called me, he said, okay, we want to do a house for the Philharmonica. Of course, I said, this is the type of project that I'm totally up for. I want to join that. And I was lucky enough also to select the site. There were 3 sites, and of course, like many of the politicians that we have, the first site was like in this amazing area with all the rich houses, and I said, no, let's go to a different place, because these guys, they already have everything. Let's try to find some other place where we can put the Philharmonic and then it could activate something, no? So we went together to see 3 different sites. We ended up choosing this one here, which is a kilometer long street here, and this is the river that ends up in the ocean. That's why it's called Boca del Rio, the mouth of the river. So we said this would be the perfect place to really have the house for the Philharmonica. And also because the wave breaker was awful. No? You would find broken beer bottles, diapers, needles. I mean, it was a mess. We thought it would be interesting not only to build the Philharmonica there, but to kind of reactivate this and reactivate all the area, change the zoning, and start to plan something that would kind of regenerate the whole building as a possibility. So even when we were presenting the project, it was very important for us to present the project with the landscape plazas on the outside and also the wave breaker with lighting and with everything. Because we knew that at some point, maybe as everything that happens also a little bit in our country is like, oh, we ran out of money, so now we're not going to be able to do the outside spaces. I said, no, you have to commit to do everything. No, you have to really commit to giving something to the community that they will be proud of. So this is a little bit of the inside of the project. We kind of took the idea of the wave breakers with the concrete blocks, and we said, what happens if these concrete elements start becoming a little bit bigger, and they create the shape of the Philharmonic in itself, and then you have the second or the third layer of density with what's going to happen in the future uses of the spaces, because these are the sites adjacent to the Fotoboca. So there were a small house or abandoned lots or even abandoned construction that you would find there. And of course, the project sits 950 people on the inside. It has recording studios, back of house, many things that, of course, a little bit like Cineteca, we wanted to give them the house for the Philharmonica, but also a place that you can house many other things, no? Theater, live performances, DJs, craft that took place in this project in particular. We were aiming for something that with the little embedded recess, you would get the textures and you would start having a project that would start aging in the way that we didn't expect it to be always super clean and polished. On the contrary, we wanted to have this experience that happens with the wave breakers in general, that they start aging with time and they start aging in a very generous way, of course, providing that water doesn't come inside. So these were the renders that we presented, and this is the final project. Again, convincing the government, let's have these 40-centimeter granite planks on the floor that kind of mimic and match the concrete poured in place of the Fotoboca. I do believe that craft feels close to the soul. I don't know all of you, but I always, I'm being more conscious that every time I stop in a place that I feel something, it's because there's something that reminds me that there was love put into it, no? Yes, something might be made computer-wise and programmed, but at the end of the day, there's something about the craft that really brings it closer to what we feel. And this is a project that it was very important to understand. This was a very meaningful experience that 4 months prior to the opening of the Fotoboca, the mayor comes to the main space and he says, "Oh, I want everybody to see me now in the main auditorium." And of course, everybody's thinking, "Oh, this guy's going to go bananas and he's going to start screaming that we're late and that we're going to miss his political career." And everybody was thinking the worst. And this is actually what happened. And I'll let the video. Person from the Philharmonica started appearing on stage wearing hard hats and vests to play for the workers that were building the Philharmonica. So it was an amazing way of acknowledging their value and what they were doing and what they were building. So it's interesting how we always hear all these people and architects and urban planners and city planners and governments saying like, yes, in the future we'll do these amazing places that will be very generous to people. Like, what are we doing now instead of thinking of the future? So what happens today? How are we treating the people that we work with today? So I'm not surprised that we got attention for the building, and I don't say it, and I don't mean it with the ego of the architect. I say, if it's done with love, if it's done with passion, if it's done for the right reasons, it will reflect that. It will reflect those amazing experiences that it had. No, I mean, this project was so. It even came to a point that the mayor, he understood his political position. He said, "You know what? When we finish building the project, the ownership of the building is not going to be the government. I'm going to give you the ownership of the building to the patronage that now runs the building." Because he knew that if the government changed, maybe the other government will kill the project. So again, where is our responsibilities as communities and as people that we want to really have projects that end up being a project for Boca del Rio, not for a government, and not for a political party. So we did this project. The wave breaker is now super successful. You have all these fishermen now coming back. It's amazing to see these little the fishermen boats that they go out, but then they gather here in the shadow. And again, this is a project that sits in the north winds hit this area of the beach, and that's why it was a little bit desolated. But now, I mean, this acts like a little bit of a protector shield for people to hang out around the area. So when I talk about, we should really be conscious of how are we doing the things that we do today? Because we're always thinking, yeah, I'm going to be really good to people in a couple of years. I'm really going to do this in the future. But we never even said hi to the guy who opened up the door when you guys walked in. So it's a little bit of a little bit to reflect on. We should really be focusing on how we're doing the things that we do. And it's, again, I said, as I mentioned, it's great to see the fishermen coming back. It's great to see now all these lots that now are going to change. You're going to have different zoning, so it will all have this new activity, and seeing it over the years. And again, you have all these spaces that were provided for other things besides the concerts on the inside of the building. So you're getting performances, you're getting book fairs. Here you have a quartet that was of the younger generations that were rehearsing, and then people just show up to have a coffee while they're listening to them. So another amazing thing was that the mayor said, even though everything's going to be sold for the inside, I want everything to be projected for free on the outside of the building. And people were like asking, like, are you crazy? Nobody's going to buy tickets. He said, no, I don't care. They will buy tickets, but this is, if I do this, and if a fisherman passes by and he doesn't even know anything about classical music, he might sit down on the bench and look at what's going on. And maybe he'll sit down with his son, and maybe that will get him to be curious enough to maybe come into the theater, and of course we'll give him the tickets for free. But this kind of communicates what's going on inside the theater, and if it's called Foro Boca, the mouth of the river, or the mouth of the performance, can't we provide that to the outside as well. So this was the day of the opening with Joshua Bell, that we had the fortune of having him come and play. Amazing, I'm a huge fan of him as a violin player. And he was also blown away by the idea that it was projected on the outside for free, and he was very excited about it. So again, just coming back to what are we doing and how we're doing it, we should question what is our role today? What do we really want to achieve? No? We talk about all the problems that are happening around, and are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution? And how are we working on this to provide solutions that again, I could have stayed with my mouth shut from the first project that I showed you, or the second one about the chocolate museum, saying, oh no, let the government do a chocolate museum. It's their responsibility to bring culture to the communities. Or maybe I can fight that fight. And I could be one of the people pushing clients to give something in return. If we all do, at the end of the day, as I said, we will have better places. So craft, communicate, connect. It's about being human. It's about being here and about now. Thank you very much.